Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our next session during Automation Days Asia. For our next presentation, I have a very special guest who is going to talk about generative AI and conversational interfaces. It is my great pleasure to introduce Puneet today, who is a chief architect at Microsoft. Puneet is a passionate technologist who currently holds the position of chief architect at Microsoft. He embarked on this journey in development at the age of 5, authored a book on C programming, and produced over 24 white papers for international journals. He presented talks to more than 40 conferences and forums, achieving a Microsoft MVP award 3 consecutive years, and his contributions has also influenced research published in the journals of the American Institute of Physics. Puneet, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you today. Welcome to Automation Days Asia.
Thanks, Jen. Happy to be part of this journey. And let's get started with generative AI and conversational interfaces. So there is a poll that would come up very shortly for all of you to potentially help us understand whether you have been on this journey of Gen AI or this is the first time that you're really hearing. And that would help me tailor some of my discussions in a way that is more understandable with this audience. I'm looking at the poll results. People have already started, so let's give in a couple of seconds before I move to the next slide. It's a single click button, so I hope more and more people can answer. Excellent. All right, I see a lot of no's to the answers, few that have started experimentation, and 9% of them, or 17%, the numbers keep changing, but few of the cases that have gone into production with few use cases. Excellent. So, and none of you have a matured practice on AI in your company. So I think this session is going to take you through 3 different topics. One, a brief around Gen AI, then conversational automation, and then challenges and consideration. The idea here is to take you through the journey of how AI is influencing, where conversational automation is shaping up, and some of the things that if you have to look into use cases into production or building a mature practice, what you should be considering. Again, these views are my own, based on my experience working with a lot of customers in this region. So if there are questions related to what I'm presenting, please feel free to post it, or we can have a chat later. So AI is not new. I think we have seen AI in our daily lives, from transportation industry to making sure that the water in the canals are clean to now powering the houseboats. There is certain aspect of AI that is in almost every aspect of life that we are touching upon, right? So right from the time we get up in the morning, leverage some of the milk products, they are being created, produced using AI and machines. And to the time we sleep, we have smart lightings at home, and everything runs on some kind of automation, some kind of AI in it. But yet what we see is that 87% of such projects never make it into production. These are projects that are typically failed or typically stalled, or there are AI tools that have been built but are never reached to their maximum potential, or have not created a positive ROI for the use cases that have been estimated. And why is this that? So there are 3 basic attributes why typically an AI project fails, an AI initiative fails. One is around the leadership support. It drives down to what is the vision, strategy, and resources available to the AI journey, and how does leadership support taking this initiative from innovation to scale. The second reason why we see some of the challenges in AI projects going into production is around data quality and accessibility, which means we have organizations which have scattered data, siloed data, messy data sitting in different systems, but there is no unified data platform which kind of brings all these things cleaned in a particular way, and there are lack of governance standards that make this easy for the AI projects to start embarking on that journey. And the third is collaboration and communication. We a lot of times believe that data science or AI based projects are some mathematical model running in a box, which given an input gives me some output. But it's a lot more than that. It's a lot of collaboration and communication. There is a value chain from how a user experience leads to data science that is required, and that touches upon the cross functional teams that are there in the organization. Now the challenge is this evolution is becoming much faster. If you see the years it took to evolve from AI to machine learning to deep learning to generative AI, you can see the gap or the number of years being reducing from one stage to another, which means this transformation is happening much faster. Uh, Ever since OpenAI kind of was brought in, you can see multimodal capabilities now coming in generative AI. So apart from text, there are images, creation of audio, video, everything is coming in the generative AI space. So this evolution that started in 2021, um, in 2023, we are seeing a very different kind of generative AI, a lot of new use cases coming up. So it becomes much more important for us to understand how do we make this real? How do we adopt AI in our use cases in our enterprises? So yes, so how do we make this entire AI real? How do we change these percentages that we have on the poll from 40% of us not using AI now saying, look, I have a mature practice on AI, or I have gone live with few production cases, right? So a lot of us have started experimenting with either Bing or ChatGPT or some kind of similar formats. Um, and the common conception is that, look, I think I can, if I can do it in ChatGPT, I can do it in a production system, or I can do it with that same ease in my enterprise system. But that's not the reality. It's kind of a myth that what works in the ChatGPT portal will work as is in an enterprise grade system. And there are certain things to be considered. So how do we make this real in production? How do we make systems that use Gen AI? So there are three parts to it. One, it needs deciphering human needs. What it means is it doesn't need to be a tech initiative per se, but it needs to start with what the end users want. A user centric analysis is a must on who is going to use the use cases or the systems that are being built. That automation that we were talking about in chatbots, who is the end user? Is it a B2C bot? Is it a B2B bot? What kind of users are they? Is it the same bot that will work as a package solution across, let's say, all the deployments that have been done for that product, or you have a different persona there? The persona from the perspective that are they engineers domain, or is it a banker's domain, and how do they have different ways to interact with the bot? So that human centric design comes into picture. And then the third thing is tech relevance. uh, is it really requiring AI? Not everything needs AI. So can it be solved? Can that problem be solved, or certain problems of that entire solution be solved with the right set of tools, be it AI or without AI? The next is around strategic AI integration. It means that you embrace minimalism while maximizing value. So the point that was there in the second or third slide around why projects fail or initiatives fail is around the lack of ROI that people see. So if you start with embracing minimalism, having AI in smaller possible use cases that generate maximum value, if you're looking at from CFO perspective, that's the best investment to do. If you're looking from a CTO perspective, you're experimenting and then building applications that get leveraged. So you then look into what are my first set of applications that become intelligent with this Gen AI capabilities. With that, you start with saying, okay, this is my app. How can I experiment and release the third thing, which is the MVP, the first part of release? And then test it with humans that have context, not just random folks, not just release it out in the wild, but test it with your trusted advisors, your humans that have context, and then iterate and build over it. A lot of times, ivory castles are built around complex AI integrations that do not get leveraged or do not get used. So what you see on the portal of leveraging on ChatGPT, you have to bring a purpose to it. You have to start with a use case and then take it to the next step. So if you look at the overall process of how this thing turns out, it starts with user experience provisioning, envisioning, goes on to proof of concept, MVP development, scaling it out, intelligent apps, and then rolling out in production. And across these stages or across these processes, there are different things that like deciphering human needs, experiment and improvisation, and across all these is strategic AI integration. So these are three phases or three key aspects to consider when you're rolling out this process of Gen AI in your company. So, how do we reimagine conversational automation with generative AI? So, what's really changed? I mean, we had bots a long time ago. Some of you might have bots running in production with the systems that you are working on a day-to-day basis as well. So, what's really changing with Gen AI? Is it something which a system that becomes um, intelligent overnight, or there is some science to it? So we also see some latest news. This is as latest news as a couple of weeks ago, that the chatbot market is going to increase. That's a Yahoo Finance uh, news to 32 billion by 2032. Now, that means there is a lot of market. There is a lot of potential in which where this conversational AI or conversational interfaces would reach. So some time ago, this screenshot that you see is from Microsoft Power Virtual Agents. We had guided conversations with chat dialogues, which means that any citizen developer, people who didn't know coding, could also start releasing bots. Before we reached to that maturity level of having guided conversations with chat dialogues, there was a scenario where we could write code in .NET, code in Python to create conversations. Every new conversation required a code. Every dialogue required some authoring experience in the code. Uh, it it was the right technology at that point in time, but then the evolution that brought in was around moving to a no code, low code development with dialogues, which means you can drag and drop and say if the bot uh, greets the user with this question, and like you guys have answered the poll, if the user selects answer 2, what could be the next potential answer? It could be that through these guided conversations, you understand what the user is typing. There was a capability to understand the language. And from there, you could extract key integral parts of the text. We call it as intents and entities. And from there, you could integrate it with the backend system. So those capabilities existed. The same bot could be deployed in multiple channels, be it Teams, be it websites, be it SMSs, or whichever way it was possible. And it would be still secure and compliant by different metrics. So different industries require different compliance measures. You could have those compliance metrics and all those things, and you could monitor your bot with analytics and insights. So these are certain things that existed with AI, not necessarily just because of Gen AI. So is it that this is getting decommissioned, or is it something that is no longer relevant? The truth is that this is not going away anywhere, right? This concept, this approach, this technology is going to be there. People will still use guided conversations with chat dialogues. The inherent capabilities that are coming into this is that every dialogue that gets generated, be it scripted through the guided conversations or be it transformed with Gen AI, will be much more intelligent, which will be more contextual in nature. And that context is something that is brought through prompt engineering. So when we look at Gen AI, you're looking at more of content generation or content creation with just APIs. Few examples on the screen. You, earlier, if you want to write a tagline of an ice cream shop, you would hire someone to really think about it. Now, with the knowledge of Gen AI, you could potentially come out with certain taglines yourself. Now, imagine a bot having to troubleshoot, an Xbox issue. Um, Somebody typing in, "I'm having a trouble getting my Xbox to turn on." The response, instead of being guided, now comes back from an auto-generated content, which is again backed by your knowledge, but it doesn't require a scripted answer, same answer for X number of users. Every user can get a different answer. The experience wise, an end user feels much more included. It uh, the experience appears much more unique to that user. If I or Jan types the same question, you will not get the same answer from the bot, and that conversation is not ending saying that sorry I can't answer this, or the chances of reaching that end point is very difficult. Um, the other capability is over a period of time we have seen, be it automation systems, service management systems, or line of business applications, all of them have structural content. Structural content is stored in relational databases. So can people now ask certain queries in a bot that gets translated into SQL queries at the back end, and the response is generated out of the box? So instead of having scripted SQLs, uh, can code generation be done straight from user's query to what the bot knows, what the schemas that bot knows, and is able to address and look into whatever big data that you have in tables and get that information for the end user? Or to the aspect, something which is multimodal in nature, that can it generate new content in image format? This is a unique case for images. It doesn't happen too often in automation scenarios, but the first three cases, the first three swim lanes that we see there, are very much relevant to how automation industry will be leveraging Gen AI. Uh, if we double click on this a little bit, as we said, we are moving from an ask and respond to also saying that I'm aware with Gen AI or OpenAI. So when we had an ask and respond scenario, we could understand the language. The bot could understand the intended entities. It could extract information through workflows. Question number one, question number two, question number three, go back and forth to reach to a point where through a dialogue workflow we can find out what's the required information for the bot. And the last bit was around automation execution. Once you've gathered the required information, then you go to the next step of automating the execution, be it automatically solving some tickets or providing knowledge base, whichever way it worked. But with Gen AI, what the change is happening is we are now becoming contextually aware, which means that the answers are not scripted. You are training the bot with domain knowledge. You're saying that this is my contextual knowledge, and it's not just question answer and perspective, but it could be reports, it could be tabular data, it could be graphical data, it could be any of those data that is given to the bot and say, please help me use this to answer. It's not a question that you match and give a scripted answer. It's generate me an answer from the knowledge that we have provided you. And that comes to the next point, that you're looking at both extractive and abstractive content. And you're not just providing pre-trained capabilities, but you're looking at newer capabilities and insights. And let's double click on these three pillars. What does contextually aware mean? What is extractive, abstractive? And what are the new capabilities and insights? So contextually aware. So if I have to look at some of the services that are available today, on the left-hand side is the chat playground, where you can actually bring your own data. Your data means it could be PDFs, text, audio, video. You upload it and the bot kind of tries to understand that knowledge. In the erstwhile days, we could upload CSVs with question and answers. Again, it was specific to a question and answer. And if the question by the similarity perspective didn't match what the user wanted to ask, or what user is asking, you don't get the right answer from there. But with you bring your own data, you're not constraining the bot to look into only question and answers. Second is around how do we now look at natural language query that comes from the user, create a query vector. So we now look into indices and then go to some kind of storage where this data, big data, is vectorized and kept. So instead of having similarities on the keywords, you're now doing vector searches. You're getting better answers, closer proximity answers, using technologies like nearest neighbor, top end matches, similar vectors, whatever works the best for a particular use case. So you're not just getting a list of documents or a list of text that match that same text or keyword, but you're getting much more relevant context. Language understanding. If I try to zoom in a little bit here, um, just give me a second. In the previous times when we had language understanding, we had to literally train every sentence or every entity type that could that the bot could interact with. It could be like, you have a particular pattern for service tickets, you have a particular pattern for system names or for machines, all those kind of things. But now we are looking at training the Gen AI or OpenAI with samples that it has to understand, that is expanding beyond what it already understands as a language. So, for example, in the slide you see the human is asking what day it is, and the intent is get day, and the date is today. If you see the last example in this, in what time zone is Sydney, Australia, the intent is get time zone is one of the intent. Sydney, Australia are the particular things, and then it marks the location as Sydney in Australia as the entity. So you can train the model with your domain knowledge in a much simplified manner uh, as part of the prompts that you give it to the Gen AI, and potentially your system start understanding it. So your learning curve on creating and understanding the language or deciphering the language and making the bot understand that language reduces significantly when you use capabilities that OpenAI provides. The next topic, extractive and abstractive. I'll spend some time on this topic. Um, Extractive is the concept where you have certain text in the knowledge, and you're telling the bot or the OpenAI that can you shorten it? Can you get me an answer to a particular question? Can you summarize it? So on and so forth. Abstractive in a way is actually creation of a content. It could be that it is rephrasing or paraphrasing a content, but it is literally not just extracting it from a document, but more of adding some insights to it. So there is more creativity on the abstractive side, and there is more conciseness in the extractive side. So from the Q&A models that we have seen in the past, that were not even extractive or abstractive, it was more of match and give. We've now gone into point that you have dozens of Q&As, and can now extract an answer from a mix of those Q&As. So a question that may be asked may not be the answer may not be in one of the same questions, but it is across multiple questions, and can now extract it and present it in a format that is more relevant to the user. And similarly, abstractive is a user has asked something. Can I now generate a summary of it? Or, for example, if the call's complete, can I tell the user that yes, we chatted on this, and this is a summary of our chat? So OpenAI can very well help you in such scenarios. Newer capabilities and insights. So a simple example text. If you have to break it down, I can hear loud noise from DL019237 upon booting, and the machine heats up. It's a laptop issue. In the erstwhile days, you could potentially find that yes, you could train the language understanding studios that this is a report issue intent. Anybody types this, it's a report issue, and you can potentially find out what kind of issues there are in your ticketing system, in your knowledge base, and produce it to the end user. What you may be able to also find out is that there is DL019237 based on regex or some capabilities. And that could be your search for, give me a document that has DL019237. But with the changes in the language models, what comes in light is there are different segments of the sentence that get broken, and could be found out that there are two different issues, loud noise and heats up. It's not one, there are two different issues in this text. It's not just report an issue. There are two different issues that a user is talking about. If I combine that, it's loud noise during booting and overheating. This is one issue, which is a summarization of two different things that a user typed. And now you have a better context of how to address loud noise during booting and overheating. Similarly, DL019237 was an identifier. In previous times, you would have to label it that this is an identifier of a machine. But from the Gen AI capabilities, what the model automatically understands, there are two different things. One is an object identifier, the second is the object type. And it tells you that the machine identifier is DL019237. Uh, so you don't have to really train uh, every different type of machine and all those things into the Gen AI. You can leverage the capabilities of language model to interpret that when the user is typing certain things, there is some correlation between the keywords that the user has typed, and from there you try to contextualize answers. So you can potentially go and look into your knowledge base that show me some data points for the laptop model DL019237. It gives you some documentation. You know the sentiment is negative from the language model. You can potentially have your analyst report to it or work on it. You can do triaging based on that, and based on the intent you can get the right information. Bring these three things together. Instead of giving scripted answers, you now make these three things work together to give a better answer to the end user. It could also be that similar answers have been answered in the past. So with that knowledge and with that information of understanding of the language, you can do better searches as well. You I'm not sure if anybody has experimented this. These capabilities come something as part of the Copilot. You can leverage this and enable this in your organization, bring it all together in a single suite of applications where you see all the AI models coming in one place for different use cases. So if you're looking at deploying or leveraging Gen AI, what are the considerations and challenges? Many things to consider, not necessarily all of challenges, but at least if I have to segment into three parts: technical infrastructure, model management and performance, and then second is around the governance and ethical aspects of it. Um, Computational resources, choose a platform that is scalable on cloud. At least you get an easy adoption of the models. You can potentially not worry about the computational resources. If you're looking at an on-prem stuff, any LLM model will require a lot of dependencies. So a lot of things that are mentioned here in technical infrastructure, from scaling, latency, model size, at least these four things are not relevant if you're using a cloud platform like Azure. Uh, Integration in existing systems is definitely a technical consideration because it's about leveraging the ROI that you already have, leveraging the investments that you've already done with your systems, right? So whatever capabilities you build, it must integrate with your existing systems. So that's a key. Model management and performance, fine tuning is sometimes required. If you're especially looking at SLMs, you may want to do fine tuning. If you're looking at large language models, just uploading documentation is a way to go at the first step. Data privacy and security. Again, when you're looking at model deployment, if it's a packaged product, how do you isolate the data of one customer from another customer is very, very important. Um, Having separate instances, for example, if you're using OpenAI on Azure, you can have separate instances for your solutions, which make sure that only developers who are working on that solution have access to it. Customer data is within their instance of OpenAI, and there is no crosstalk, or there is no new information that you're feeding from prompt is being leveraged to answer somebody else's questions. So that becomes very important over there. Model drift, continuously monitoring the accuracy of the responses that you get from the model is very important, because you're feeding the model with a lot of prompts, and that's the way that's the way that the model is trying to understand your domain language, your domain model. I showed an example of some of the intents, where human and intent was classified, and those all go as prompts. So model is really learning those things. uh, that one-time learning kind of helps the model understand what's the next way to answer those questions, or to find out the intent in similar ways, right? So sometimes it is important to retrain it to avoid that drift, and maintaining training data quality is very, very important. So I spoke about the key pillars why organizations sometimes are not able to scale or not able to take uh, their AI systems into production. It all comes down to one of the other aspects that I highlighted around unified data platforms. So, do you have quality data available for training? And the last bit around model management performance is the feedback loop. Bring that human into the picture. There always be a scenario where a human has to be involved for moderation of content, from uh, checking the model, also from the end user perspective, that how are users getting the responses. So there has to be a telemetry built in to monitor the consumption of those models and how the end users are interacting. Ethical and user related considerations where these are getting deployed become very important. In some of the regulated industries, data protection and privacy regulations are required. Some countries have strict regulations on where the data resides. So those things need to consider. Um, Addressing biases in training data. This is very important. Giving or feeding the data, or making sure that your prompts are removing any kind of biases or any kind of information that is harmful to the end users, that should be removed as part of training as well as part of the production system. So those things are something that you need to bake in your process of governance. And the last thing is around user understanding. So some AI cannot solve all the problems, and one model will not be able to be the model or the solution that is addressing everything that a system needs to do. So managing that end user expectations, even if it just means that having a disclaimers in the right place, that users understand this is the answer generated by AI, or telling the end user that the bot will be able to address ABC aspects, um, will contain the user expectations, and it will eventually lead to a better NPS. Uh, so, applying AI responsibly at Microsoft, we follow 6 AI principles. The link is there, and I think you'll get the copy of this. So, go through the documentation around how you can potentially also think around responsibly applying AI in your organizations. This is very, very important as you start from MVP to scale to production, because at the end of the day, all these systems are touching or are influencing how end users, your users, are gonna interact and get better experience. With that, I'll pause my session. I'm, I'm hoping you'll get started with your AI journey. You can connect with me. I'm happy to address few questions that have come up on the chat.
Thank you so much.
Yes, the presentation deck will be shared.
That's a very wonderful presentation around generative AI. I personally especially liked the ethical principles that you mentioned, and the fact that there's already a whole guidance around that, because that's a theme that we have been hearing throughout the whole conference, is how do you address that? And it's very interesting to see that that has already been formalized and structured. I kind of expected nothing less from a company like Microsoft, but it's also good to hear that that is publicly available. Might provide a lot of guidance for participants who are struggling with that specific question.
Yep.
Good. I'm gonna moderate some questions if that's okay. We still have some time.
Sure thing.
A couple of questions coming in. First question is very simple: will the presentation deck be shared after the session?
Yep.
Answer is yes. So let's not doing that, that's not an in-depth one. So let's go to one of the more in-depth kind of question, and that is, what advice would you offer to businesses and professionals who are hesitant or cautious about adopting generative AI and conversational interfaces in their automation strategies? And then, and how would you address those concerns?
All right. So I think there is, okay. Let's look at it from this perspective, right? I see there are certain other questions also on the similar lines, right? So which is good. So when you look at what are the potential barriers to adopting these technologies, and I'll go back to one of my slides there. Give me a sec. Okay, so these are also some of the barriers in adopting AI technologies, right? So I think for businesses, SMEs, professionals who are first keen to adopt Gen AI or conversational interfaces, the first thing is to start small. Don't think about going into production at the very beginning of your process. Start small. Start with experimenting. Get the business use case. Often, some of the implementations are a tech initiative that do not see light at the end of the tunnel. But if there is a business objective to it, you kind of maximize your ROI on the work, right? So identify a business use case, find the right platform where you can adopt it with confidence. So other aspects of other barriers are, is my industry adopting it? Is my data secure? If I put in some data, then is it secure? If you're using public services, free services, potentially your data is actually being used for training, right? It may not be confidential in that sense. But if you're using services, being from Microsoft, I can talk about Azure. If you're using certain services, for example, Azure OpenAI, you create your own instance of model. That model is restricted to data that you interact with. I cannot see it. Jan cannot see it. Somebody in your company cannot see it. So it's very limited to that aspect. So break those barriers. Start with utilizing these private services that help you experiment, fail fast, learn fast, and then gather the leadership support to take that innovation to scale. So that is something that we have seen work for a lot of scenarios, because these AI initiatives are actually business initiatives.
Yeah.
They need to have some business objective.
Yeah. So starting small in a demo or sandbox environment, that would be the first step.
Yep.
Good. Then let's go to another question from Jamila. This next one. How would you start considering limited budget and limited technical resources? And I think that's an interesting question as well.
Right. So okay. So the myth is that AI is going to be more expensive to implement. It requires the right articulation of the way you use AI, that makes it either economically viable or too expensive. If you're processing, let's say, 1,000,000 documents with 20 pages each, potentially it will require a lot of time to process as well, and the cost will also be different. But you're looking at uploading your data to AI models and then using services like bot and all. It then depends on how much is your bot consumption, how many users are actually using bot, and that will be directly transactional or directly related to the business that you're driving with the bot. If your bot is not driving a business, you don't want the bot out there, right? So if you tie it up to the business use case, potentially there is an easier way to justify budgets. Technical resources, there is a lot of guidance available. You can ping me, or I can find some links and send it across on how you can get started from level 100 to level 400. There are pre-trained models. You don't have to learn data science to get started with that. We are fortunate to be in that era right now, that the democratization of AI has become so powerful that with certain prompts and all, you can kind of get started very quickly.
Yeah, I also see online a lot more courses and I would say quick ways in which you could leverage a lot of this technology without indeed having to pay right up front thousands of dollars for licenses or any specific parts.
Yeah, it's based on consumption. So it's not, if you do not use that model, if it's lying there, you don't pay for it.
Yeah.
So it will somewhere come down to the business use case that you're catering to.
Good.
And there are professional certifications for free, like Jan said. I mean, Microsoft has one, deep learning has another one. So there are professional certifications available for free, where you can go through these trainings and get certified yourself.
Absolutely. Let's do one more question, last one, because I think it's very interesting. This one is coming from Mohammed, is asking, what advice would you give to make the response from AI much more humane? And I think that that's an interesting question.
Indeed. So, okay, so there was a joke around, there was a meme, and not a joke, but we had someone going to the ATM machine and asking an AI, and there's actually a person sitting behind and disposing cash. Uh, from there, we moved on to the jokes around there's a robot sitting behind it who is doing some job, and partly it comes because we have scripted answers from the bots that we have interacted with, right? Um, those scripted answers were a way of past where you could, um, the, we have to write answers beforehand expecting the user will ask a question and this is the better answer to give. That was a notion of going around and having the chatbots. But if you see now, the technology is changing. I'll just go to the extractive and abstractive and just zoom in a little bit. Okay, so this, for example, this slide here, you see the prompt, the second prompt around, I'm having trouble to get my Xbox turn on. If it was a scripted answer, you would say, well, look, you can look into this article and that. Or you could type the same text and then leave it. What becomes human is that I'm not giving you a document only.
Mm-hmm.
What becomes human is that I've given you information that is coming out of 3 or 4 documents. If you've used, for example, Bing, you go and type on Bing, you do not get in the chat mode, you get answers and citations that I have generated this answer from these sources. That's the next phase of where the industry is going. It's not giving documents that go figure out what the answer is from those 2 documents. That's what erstwhile search engines or erstwhile search mechanisms were. Find the best document, give it to them. Or there's a scripted answer, give that answer to them. We're going to a point where it's actually mixing both of that. How you can make it more human is to feed it with a personal information, persona information, not personal. Persona means I am, this bot is catering to users. That's for namesake, say in an airline industry, and most of them are going to be travelers who have booked tickets with us in an age group this to this. This is from our database, right? You find out from the database and train the bot that this is my context. You have to be empathetic. You cannot be rude. You have to be concise, and the bot changes its response. I'll go to the abstractive and extractive slide. There is one small text which is difficult to notice, but let's try that, right? So if you see this, the word concise is written here, a concise summary. Now, this document could be 60 pages or 100 pages. The idea is it generated a text, which is essentially, if you read this, it is not looking like it's scripted. This is definitely not scripted, and it's not from one particular text in that page, right? And if you read this, it doesn't appear, a bot developed, but it's coming from an AI model. So you have to create the prompt in such a way that you influence the persona, you expect it to give a particular set of outcomes, and then let the magic happen.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a very good way of explaining it. I see a lot of thumbs going up. Correct. Good. In that case, Puneet, I would like to thank you so much for being on Automation Days. I hope you had fun in the process as well. I was personally very impressed with your presentation, so I would already like to extend an invitation for next year to be part of our conference again. Thanks so much for joining and for being a part of our program this week. It's been a very, very interesting session.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me, and happy to collaborate further as well. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you so much. Good. Then let me share with everyone what's coming up next. So on the hour, which is 15 minutes from now, we have 2 new tracks coming up. And in track number 1, which is going to be my track, we're going to be listening to Vinay Reddy, who's the CEO at Chatbots Solutions. And he is going to be talking about how automation can leverage auto machine learning models in addressing automation and automating complex scenarios. And on the other track, in track number 2, we're going to have Fabrice Marie, who is the CTO at Ensure Southeast Asia. And he's going to talk about building a comprehensive end-user IT desktop automation solution. So again, I think 2 very interesting topics that are coming up. So make your pick, and I will see you back 15 minutes from now. Thanks, everyone.